Hello, I'm Julie Thibaud-Dury, Closiist Corner. I met so much incredible young people in New York City that I decided to make a sustainable guide, GREENFORBLUE. With Closiist, our sustainable marketplace, I already helped people to buy sustainable, but it's not enough. Hello, Nicole. Hello, Emily. I am so glad to meet you today to Bushwick, and we will talk about Clean Bushwick Initiative. And Nicole, you are the co-founder of, we say, CBI. Yeah. And you started in 2016. Can you explain to us when did you start to take an interest on sustainability?
So I think as a teenager, I definitely was interested in just causes and volunteering and giving my time. So when I was in high school, I had an organization that was sort of similar, actually. It was a little different, but similar. Like we just did things in the community. Like I grew up in New York City, so we would do things like collect blankets and give them out to the homeless, or just have events sort of related to that. And then I did some volunteering for animal rights stuff and Greenpeace and things like that. So that's sort of like the early version of how it got started. But then I moved to Bushwick probably 14 years ago, and I really became, sorry, Bushwick is loud. It was very, very apparent early on, and this is sort of before it really heavily gentrified and all these new businesses arrived. It was already pretty littered. And I grew up near the East Village, so it's not like that was something so shocking, but I think it was shocking because it wasn't Manhattan and it's quieter, and believe it or not, in a way over here, less populated. And I was kind of just, I don't know, freaked out by the litter. So one day I saw that somebody put a meetup group post about cleaning up litter in the neighborhood, and I'm like, all right, I'd be the biggest hypocrite ever if I didn't go and do this, because that's all I talk about. So I met this girl, Sarah, back, and she and I cleaned that day. It was just the two of us, and then we strategized from there about how we would get more people involved and maybe get some of the businesses involved. It never fails here. Yeah, my corner looks so quiet, and then if you're there for like 10 minutes, you're like, it's so noisy here. So she and I talked about, you know, how we could get more people involved, maybe get some of the businesses to help, and so it kind of went from there, really. And then at some point she moved to California, and then I took over running it. And at that point I made an Instagram account. I don't do social media personally, but I was working with another woman, Deb, and she showed me this Instagram she was doing with trash, and I'm like, wow, that's really impactful, like when you see it visually like that. So I started the Instagram, and I think that's how it got to be, to even grow more and yes, to bring in more people. So that's sort of how the group started. But my journey on like sustainability and bringing the intersection to garbage and waste reduction, I think really hit home in like a strong way when Pre-Cycle opened. Yes. And I went there and I bought Thea Johnson's book, and I did my own sort of walk-through waste audit of my apartment. And I realized that being like a vegetarian or sometimes vegan, and you know, voting a certain way and being sort of very thoughtful about, you know, my civic engagement was not enough in terms of my environmental impact, that I really wasn't doing enough at all. But I hadn't realized how little I was actually doing because my consumer choices were so bad. So yeah, that's a long way to sort of tell you how it started.
Yes, it's so great to learn about that, because we are all different ways to start sustainability. And you, Emily?
Yeah.
Can you explain to us?
For me too, it was Thea Johnson's book that I read back in 2017 or 2019, somewhere around there, and really became fascinated with the idea of zero waste and how I can make my consumer choices reflect my values. And then I also participated in the Sanitation Foundation's Zero Waste Academy in 2021, so just a couple years ago, and really became fascinated with zero waste in New York City specifically, and decided to pivot my career from program management and art education to sustainability, focusing on zero waste. And then that's sort of how and when I got connected with Clean Bushwick Initiative, and Nicole and I realized we were very aligned on these topics. So I'm really excited to be involved with Clean Bushwick Initiative because it is in my home area, in my home neighborhood. I do live in Ridgewood, but I spend a lot of time in Bushwick, and so it means a lot to be able to help clean up and help educate the local community.
Yes, and why we have so much garbage on the street, paper? Why it's possible to have that in New York?
That's a loaded question. Yeah, that's a loaded question. And when I first started doing this work, I think I wanted this one answer, because people will, there's so much outreach from the community and different people, and people are like, why aren't there more garbage cans? Why doesn't the sanitation come more? Why don't the sanitation workers get off the truck and sweep the sidewalk? Like, everyone has this idea of what's going to solve the problem, and there just isn't one real answer. I think there's specific challenges in certain neighborhoods over other neighborhoods that I think make the problem worse. For example, in lower income neighborhoods such as Bushwick, I think there's less home ownership here. Mm-hmm. And I think, that means us as individuals, as renters, we don't have a whole lot of say on whether or not our landlords do and follow through on their legal responsibility, which is to clean the sidewalks, to clean 18 inches out into the street, to properly set up garbage bins. So we're limited as renters, and we only have about 9% home ownership in Bushwick. So part of it is that the business owners and the landlords sometimes are not actually doing what they're legally required to do. Beyond that, I think, if you're talking to me as a zero waste person, we're just all creating too much trash. We need to really reevaluate our purchasing, our actions around food and how much food we're wasting. And I think United States in particular, I would say more so than other countries, but New York is a really obviously consumer driven. It's a to-go, it's just grab and go. We're not thinking about it. People are rushing and they're trying to have a good time, or they're just trying to make ends meet. There's just so many reasons why people's lives are busy here, and so this throwaway culture makes it easy for people. But the downside to that is obviously where we are now, which is, and I'm not saying garbage is the only, thing impacting the climate. There's lots of things, but that's really certainly one of them, because everything we buy has been created, and there's an impact in the beginning and how we're disposing of it. And only some of weirdos like me are really obsessed with this, but I think it's really important for people to start thinking about those things.
Yes, totally agree with you. And thank you for your work. It's how many volunteers do you have, and how many events? And
so it ebbs and flows. Unfortunately, in some ways, Bushwick is a very transient neighborhood. We have this really robust group of people who've lived in this neighborhood for decades, and their families have been here for decades. And then I think as it gentrified, we have a new influx of people here, and they maybe come and go a little bit more. And so getting a really solid regular group of volunteers is challenging. I think we have a nice core group of people that work together, but I see people for like months and then I never see them again. So I think that's just also the nature of New York, I think, a little bit at this point. But we have so much support both from residents, business owners, the local politicians, local agencies. I can't say enough of how much support I've gotten on so many different levels and so many different aspects. We've done, oh gosh, I don't even know how many events here. I think in 2022, I think I must have done like 30 events or something. And a lot of collaborations with other, businesses like Precycle or Cup Zero or Eco Rate, but then also local businesses like Nook, where we're sitting now, Echo Bravo, the Bar of the Black Pearls, like just I can go on and on about the collaborations, House of Yes, for their Earth Day event. We've done, just a lot of collaborating, and I think that's also how the group has grown and become really, and Emily and I talk about this a lot, like the cleanups are a way to bring people together, and it's an opportunity to educate people, but I think it's a Band-Aid on a bigger problem. Like the cleanups really, I think they have an impact in a certain way, but I don't think that they're obviously going to solve the problem of the litter here. But I think what's been great is the collaborations and growing the group and the platform on, the Instagram platform, to be able to educate, especially most recently around composting, which is, we've gotten all these new bins in the neighborhood because obviously a third of the trash, residential and commercial, is food waste. And obviously wasting food is a moral failing, but it's also an environmental, horror.
Yes.
So
it's why we learned to the Zero Waste Academy.
Right. And so, like, obviously my first message is always like, don't waste food, like learn how to be a better consumer. But if you're going to be throwing it out, obviously having these smart bins in the neighborhood and having these local drop-offs like BK Rot, this is something I hope eventually everyone is doing, and then with the brown bin expanding, we'll be seeing more. So I think that'll help a lot for a lot of issues, especially the rampant rodent problem we have here.
I was going to say, when are we going to start?
When are we going to talk about rats? My favorite topic. I talk about rats a lot. I have a rat phobia.
Yes.
Emily she's seen me screaming in the street.
But that definitely is also a contributing factor to why there's litter in the street, because there's a lot of food in our plastic bags, and New York City doesn't have any containerized waste. We just put our loose bags on the street, and then the rats, it's an open buffet every night that we feed them a great meal, and they open the bags, and then the rest of the debris and residual stuff that's in those bags is then exposed and can be blown around off the streets. So that's another factor that contributes to the litter problem. And so we're all really excited about composting becoming more accessible, and especially then the rollout of the program.
Yes, I'm so glad to see that in New York. So much more compostable bins. I live in Queens, and I'm so glad of that.
I know.
Can't wait to see all the new bins in all New York.
Very excited.
And how we can help CBI?
Help. Oh, well, I'm always happy when we get new people volunteering. Very recently, we've gotten so much outreach from different people of all kinds wanting to do really interesting kinds of events. I like to also do things with the Parks Department, so we do like tree care training, and we'll do rain garden maintenance with DEP. We're probably going to do some events upcoming with Newtown Creek Alliance. So I really love educating people not only on, litter mitigation, obviously, and waste reduction, but also on the green infrastructure here, because another big issue, which I think is in part tied into litter, but not exclusively, but partially tied into litter, is the flooding issue, which is really bad in Bushwick.
Especially here.
So talking about how the tree beds and caring for tree beds, and also caring for rain gardens is another important aspect of reducing the flooding issue. So I like the green infrastructure events are some of my favorites, where people can plant in the rain gardens or clean out the tree beds with the support of these agencies that obviously have the tools and the resources that a community group doesn't necessarily have. So those events are pretty special.
Okay, thank you. And do you have any advice to give to someone who would like to make the same thing, the same initiative in other states?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I definitely talked to a lot of people who were trying to start groups and given advice, and I think it's definitely important to be involved with businesses. I think they can lend a lot of support in terms of maybe hosting you after, or supplying some of the bags and gloves you might need. Obviously it's not without cost to run these groups. We use I do reusable gloves to not further, create more litter. But these things do cost money. So you have to have some aspect of fundraising going on. And usually getting some support from local businesses is a way to do that. I think it's not a hard thing to start. I definitely recommend, bringing an educational aspect to it.
Yes.
Because you don't want to just have a cleanup and then kind of without that element. I think education is kind of paramount to changing behaviors.
Yes.
Because we all have to start somewhere, and there's no shame in where you are. It's just maybe where you're going is the more important piece of that. So yeah.
Yes, if you don't understand why you do something, it's don't make sense. Yes.
Well, we're in a culture that we're just used to this culture. This is what we're used to, and it's accepted. And
yes.
we don't know any different. You just in this kind of hamster wheel of New York City, and you don't even realize sometimes, like with the whole skip the stuff bill, and I know you interviewed Rain, that's, we got used to just opening a bag for takeout and seeing all this unnecessary stuff.
Yes.
And it's commonplace, it's normal, but it shouldn't be normal. I think we just have to create new normals, right? Around around waste.
To create a new world, we need new habits and new ways.
And so I think cleanups are a great way to bring people together to further that type of education. Talking about the environment. These neighborhoods are often polluted, and I think especially in neighborhoods that feel a little bit left behind, where there's more poverty, or people are struggling, and so they're just struggling to get food or shelter and make sure that they can stay in their homes.
Yes.
And sometimes I think the amount of pollution in neighborhoods and the asthma rates, it's like people don't have the time or the resources to be fighting those battles, and they really shouldn't have to. I feel like it's really unfortunate that people's socioeconomics also really have an interconnection to the health and well-being of the environment that they live in. So that really frustrates me, and that's certainly something that I think about a lot, doing these cleanups and trying to help this community that I've lived in now for such a long time, and I grew up not far from. And people deserve to have a clean neighborhood. It shouldn't only be wealthy people that get to have that. That's crazy to me. Yeah.
Well, I have a problem with my battery, so we have only 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you have something else to add that I forget to ask to you? Something you think important?
I think we covered everything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, the important things to me are, being civically engaged if you're able to be, voting, if you're able to vote, really getting to know local politicians. They have so much power. Right now we have this amazing city council.
Yes.
And we vote these people in, and they come to events. You can go to their offices. It's, if somebody gets to the level of mayor or governor or president, you probably have very little chance of meeting them. But when you're talking about local politics, you have every opportunity to engage in these people and let them know what's important to you in your community. So when people say voting doesn't matter, I couldn't disagree more, especially at a local level.
Yes.
So actually, I think voting is one thing everybody should be doing if they're able to. I think that is something that can actually create a lot of change with policy. And the city council is a great example of that. The things that are being passed right now are, there's some great legislation, environmental and otherwise, and other things, mental health, a lot of really important legislation. So.
We will add all the link like that if people want to help you, to be volunteers, they will have all the information to join you.
Great, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Do you have something to add, Emily?
No, I think that's it. I think we covered it all.
Yes, she's
thank
perfect.
you.
I'll just keep talking all day. I'll just keep talking. Ask my family, they'll tell you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, I don't know why my battery is just done.